So the name of the channel is I Want to Read, and when life is crazy, how does one find time to do that? Here's my personal thoughts. Welcome back again to the library, Readers and Rapscallions. It's good to see everyone here. So what I want to talk about today isn't like a book review or a book haul or any of my usual kinds of videos. Um, I have gotten a question from people that I know and talk to when I say that I read a lot. It's like, well, how do you find time to do all that? And I kind of want to go over some of the ways that I can. So for people who want to read more and maybe aren't able to, you can maybe shuffle things around and kind of figure out how you can make reading work for you. So before I kind of go into this, to be clear, I'm not putting it above or below any other hobbies, in my opinion. If your hobby or pastime is safe and legal and doesn't hurt anyone, it's perfectly fine to do. If you want to watch 6 hours of TV, play 6 hours of video games, or read a book for 6 hours, it's all perfectly fine. I just like to read. I do other stuff, but I just like to read. So this is kind of how I go about making that time. So the first and most basic thing is just find what you like. Start looking. BookTube is a great place to look around and find something that piques your interest. Maybe go with some classics. If you have a particular favorite movie that was adapted from a book, you could look at that book, because a lot of times, even if an adaptation is very, very faithful, there are going to be differences just on limitations between screen and page. You could think about the shows or the games that you enjoy. Kind of what genre are those in? Is that like a action thriller type thing? Well, maybe you want to go with like a spy novel. Is this like a slow burn post-apocalyptic type thing? If you like The Last of Us, maybe you could read The Stand. If you like Red Dead Redemption, you could play or you could read Lonesome Dove. If you like Game of Thrones, you could read A Song of Ice and Fire, or you could read something like Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, which is a series that inspired the author of A Song of Ice and Fire. So you can kind of explore genres you already like, and by diving into these genres based off of what you already know you enjoy in other media, you can use that as a springboard to explore the genre further or to go into other genres. If you like your fantasy, you could go into epic fantasy, kind of smaller scale fantasy. You could go into cozy fantasy. You could go into science fantasy, and then from there you could step into science fiction. If you like your science fiction, you could go the opposite way. There's your classic sci-fi, which is more idea driven. There's your modern sci-fi, which is kind of blending a little bit more into fantasy somewhat and is getting a bit stronger in characters and not so much idea driven as old school science fiction. And when you get to this point, you kind of learn that certain genres are more settings than plot elements. So you could have, for example, Lord of the Rings, Song of Ice and Fire, and Bookshops and Bone Dust. They're all considered fantasy, and they're all like wildly different. And really, the only thing that connects them is a loose interpretation of what a setting is, and that's it. So that's kind of why like it gets easier to figure out exactly what you like the more you explore and you take little tastes. One of the great ways to find what you like is to utilize your library. Now, a lot of people are limited by the size of their local library. I'll kind of get into that in a minute, but your library is free. You're actually kind of wasting money if you're not using it, because at least in the United States, libraries are funded by your local taxes. So you're taking advantage of the tax dollars that you spend and utilizing a free resource. So this is a great way to check out books if you have like something gigantic and you aren't quite sure about it yet. Maybe you don't finish it before your loan ends, and you can renew it, or you can go out and purchase a copy. If you have something that you could finish in a day and you don't really want to spend the money to buy a copy, you could get it at your library. And I mean, you might even when you check out, you can just park it in a chair in the lobby and read it right there. And this is also a great risk-free way of checking out new genres. This is how I kind of first dipped my toes into graphic novels because I didn't really know a lot about them, and I wanted to try some out without spending a bunch of money on duds, basically. And so I was able to explore my local library's small collection of comics and graphic novels and find some things that I enjoyed there. And more about your library is kind of overlapping with audiobooks. So Audible is the big one. That's the one through Amazon. I don't particularly enjoy using it unless it's for something that is exclusive to Audible, because sometimes they have deals and licensing agreements with authors that their audiobook has to only go on Audible. But it can be a little bit expensive, uh, especially if it's like one book a month, and you can get through them pretty quickly depending on what your lifestyle is like. If you're driving a lot like I do for work, I like to use Libby, and that is kind of the cure I was talking about for having a limited library. So where I'm from, my library is like medium sized, I'd say. It's not like the New York Public Library, but it's not a small town library. It's a modest sized collection. But through Libby, what I've learned is when you have your library card, a lot of times your library is connected and networked to others within your state. I'm also speaking of this from a perspective of someone in the United States. I don't know how this works overseas, but your library is connected with other libraries in your state or region, so you can have access to other libraries within your state because they're part of that network. So you actually have a significantly larger uh, pick of books than you thought. And this is a great way to explore audiobooks. I use this on my commute, and just kind of we can just step into audiobooks. This is a wonderful way for people who perhaps have difficulties with paying attention to written words. So a lot of people want to read, but it's the visualization aspect is just a hard thing. If you're just looking at words on a page, that's hard for some people to kind of see what's going on. A book is essentially a movie in your head. And so as long as you can actively listen and you don't kind of get lost, you can utilize audiobooks. And they're uh, great for people who have long commutes. And obviously you can't read when you're on the road. I know I might drive 200 miles for work, in a week or more. And so it's a great way to get audiobooks playing. It's there's stepping into another category of why you can read. It's I'll get into it a little bit more, but about your reading space. So I listen to my audiobooks when I'm exercising as well, or when I'm on a run. I don't really listen to a whole lot of music. It's mostly just the audiobooks. And that's how you can get through that's how I get through like 5, 6 books in a month. And there's more things that you can do with audiobooks. You can use this while you're doing your dishes and cooking dinner. You can do this, like I said, during the commute, during work hours. Uh, you might run into issues with paying attention, because sometimes if I'm driving, I sort of zone out a little bit and I kind of get lost. This is why I don't like to have audiobooks that are kind of nuanced. I wouldn't listen to Malazan on an audiobook because that's a very complex narrative. Because if you drift off and your attention is somewhere else for a few minutes, you come back, you might get completely lost. And the advantage that I like with a book in the event of something like that happens is if I need to clarify something, it's a lot easier to flip back a couple of pages than to kind of shuffle and scan around. And if you're on the road, you shouldn't be doing that anyways on your phone. But yeah, so that's kind of the audiobook side of it. And one of the most important things that you can do with reading more and trying to get that incorporated into your life is to have a designated space and designated time. Sometimes it's easier said than done. I have this time of year, and late summer into fall is the busiest time of year for me with my job. So it's harder when are out of the house at 5 in the morning, get back at 7:30, and you're going to bed at like 9 or 10. It's not a lot of time, but if you have a designated space, kind of like having a home office, then your brain is in the mindset like, okay, this is where I'm sitting, this is my book space, and now I can read. So for me, for example, I'm an early riser. I'm up at 5 o'clock. I'm out of the door by like 6 or 7 on work days. So when I have breakfast, I'm reading my book. And then when I get back home, the last hour or so before I go to bed, I'm also reading my book. And that's a little kind of a life hack that I like to use. A lot of people use their phones and are kind of scrolling while they're getting ready to go to sleep. That blue light actually messes with your brain and kind of tricks your brain into thinking it's still daylight outside, so you're not as primed to sleep. Reading before bed, I notice a distinct improvement with how I sleep if I'm doing that, and as opposed to if I'm, drifting off and then wake up and then go on my phone for a little bit, trying to fall back asleep. It's a lot harder. And then there's also the other side of it where I'll sometimes read a page and then realize I've read the same page like 4 times, and the old eyes are kind of like doing one of these, and you're okay, it's time to go to bed, even though if I've only read like 2 pages, it's time to go to bed. Reading some is better than reading nothing at all. A lot of people put pressure on themselves to hit deadlines, especially if you're somebody who consumes online content of people like me or folks who are better at this than I am, about going through 2, 5, 10 books a month, and put a lot of pressure on ourselves to read, and you shouldn't do that. It's not a contest. It's as fast or as slow as you like. I just like to explore these stories, and I happen to have a disposition where I can put the time into it, and a lot of people don't have that. So it's perfectly fine if you only get through 50 pages in a month or 10 pages in a month. If you're going at your own pace, that's totally okay. So the most important, the singular thing that I can offer as advice to read more, listen closely, kids, put the phone down. I I fall into this trap all the time. So sometimes I'll, because I'm a very visual person, it helps if I can see something. It's kind of going back to what I said earlier about audiobooks and stuff. But because I'm a visual person, a lot of times if I'm reading a book, especially if I'm just starting out a series, I want to like Google image some fan art of what a setting looks like, and or what a character's outfit looks like or something like that, just so I can visualize it easier. And then that turns into me looking up something completely different because, oh, I have my phone, I might as well. And then I'm 10 pages in and I've been on my phone for an hour and my reading time is over. And that happens a lot. Take your phone, put it across the room. If you get a text, then, you know, put your, oh, I have to get up and go across the room to get my phone instead of just picking it up. It makes it a lot easier to kind of keep into your head like, no, this is reading time. Obviously, emergencies and if you really need to do something are an exception. There's also the pitfall you can fall into where if you're like looking for clarification on something, or if you do what I do and you're looking for some art to kind of give you a visual reference, you can accidentally find spoilers and ruin something for you, which I've definitely done, and I hate that. So be careful with that. I use reading as kind of a cure for the doom scrolling. Anyways, I've noticed a significant reduction in the amount of time I spend like flipping through Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and all that nonsense. Keeping up on current events as minimal as possible so I stay informed, but not so much that I just get sad at how everything is. Books are an escape, and that's the way I go about reading them. So that's kind of my advice on how you can read more. I know this was a little bit kind of rambly and formal, but that's because this is Uncle Ian talking to you guys to give you advice on how I enjoy my hobby, so I can help share the love, share the enthusiasm, and encourage other people to read more because reading is awesome, and I just love it, and I would be over the moon if people could take this advice and spread it out into their lives, share it with others, and kind of encourage people to embrace reading more. That's going to do it for today, guys. Please give me a like and subscribe if you feel like I have earned it. And we will see you next time in the library.